let's see here. There we go. All right. All right. It is Crystal Friday. So I still have my semi-janky setup, but it'll work. Let's see. I'm going to pop the chat out so I can see better. So yeah, if you're watching live, feel free to drop questions into the chat. I've noticed that, or I've heard that some folks that come and join have had questions, and they either ask after the fact or they might comment somewhere like Twitter or the YouTube or something. So you can pop them into chat. I check the chat. I have, if you're not familiar with my janky setup, I have a laptop on the side that's just for chat. So I check over there every few minutes or so, and if there's a question, I'll just answer it on the air. So another PSA, I have been putting all of these streams onto YouTube. So let's go to YouTube here, and I'll show you where it is. Switch account to me. Not that one, this one. So, videos. So my streams are on a playlist called, where are my, nope, this is the wrong channel. Wow. That's me. Well, apparently this will not change. Okay, well, at any rate, I will put the link to all of my streams on my site, and I'll also tweet this out, and I'll put a blog post up too. I'll just put it in all the places. So if you're interested in watching some of the previous Crystal Friday episodes, or you're not going to be able to make a future one, you'll be able to go to that link. You'll find the link in one of all the places, I guess, and you'll be able to go to that link, and you can go to the YouTube playlist with all of the Crystal Friday episodes. And they'll all be dated, so you can kind of follow along in order as I build this thing out. So without further ado, let's go back into the project we've been doing called cprox. And just to recap, this is basically just a REST API for like a key value store so far. So I have been thinking about, well, just to go a little further, you can add a URL with a code. So this is kind of like a URL shortener. I just found some incorrect docs. Anyways, you can add a URL with this post. You put a code up in the path, and then you put the URL in the post body, which is JSON. And then you go do the GET request to /forward and then put the code in. And it will actually forward you to whatever URL you registered for that code in the post body. So at that point, then it's in the key value store. So under the hood, it's basically just using this library called Numite, which I'll show in a second. And at the end of the day, when you're done, you can do a delete, and it'll delete the URL and the code from the underlying key value store forever. So then the forward won't work for that code anymore. So let's see what's the best way to get to this. I think it would be in the shard. Here we go. So this is like a disk-based key value store. So kind of think like SQLite, but way fewer features. I'm not really sure about performance. I don't really know. It's probably not multi-threaded or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure it's concurrency safe. So, to each their own, but this is a super, super easy way to do key value stores with Crystal, at least that I've found so far. So I'll show how it is used in my code. So we go up here, we create our new database, and it's just put into cprocs.db. So this is kind of like the, quote unquote SQLite file. And I actually cleared out the database, but it's just a bunch of gobbledygook that Newmite handles. It's just binary data. So then when you're ready to, you can try to read out of the database. So here, this is like a read. And this question mark, just as a recap, or if you're not familiar, this will either get the URL code out of the database, or if it's not there, it will return null, or well, nil in Crystal terminology. So that's why we have to check here. If it's not nil, so that would be, this is a method call that has a question mark, so that's different. So this is saying if the URL was not nil, because we got the not here, and we're going to redirect. So Crystal has this cool thing where once you check if it's not nil, Crystal will automatically, magically make URL the value of URL and not the URL or nil. Because this up here is kind of a union type. It could be the URL or it could be nil. But yeah, once you check, Crystal does this cool thing where it says, okay, well, the compiler will automatically make sure that it is not nil. There's a little magic in there that kind of forces you in the type system. So your code literally won't compile if you try to use URL, but it is in fact nil. And then in the else, then you know that URL is nil. So you just do a little return. This is basically a return for Crystal. Basically, it's the last value that Crystal finds while it's running that gets returned. So with my web framework, the last thing you return automatically gets sent back down to the client, whether it's curl or Postman or the browser or whatever. So we've got this, if else and then a nested if else. So if you follow it down, let's say that the code is not in the database. So if you follow it down, the code is in the path, that's this. So we say if the code is not nil, then we're going to go into here, into this if. Now we're going to say look up the URL, and the question mark means this variable here is going to either be the URL string or nil. So then we go to the if and we say, is the URL not nil? No, that's going to be a false. And we go into this else, and then we say code is not registered. So in that path, if the URL code was there, but the URL corresponding to that code is not in the database, that code path is going to end up here. So we're going to return the error code. Okay, so that works the same for all the other code paths as well. So that's a read. A write is pretty much the same thing. This one's a little more complicated, but the write ends up here on line 63. And a little side note, if you were here last week, you saw me really struggle through all of this code. I tried to make it like do this functional programming way to do stuff, but I couldn't quite make that work with the type system. And I kind of honestly just didn't pursue it because this code is clear enough. I'm sure there's going to be ways in the future for me to clean it up, but it's clear enough, and it works. So I didn't really go pursue some more complicated implementation. If and probably when I do, I'll take that code and make it more general, this functional code, functional programming code, and make it more general, and then I'll put it up as a separate library that I can test separately and all that. And at that point, once I know it works, then I'll pull it back into here. So this is a write, and then down here we've got a delete. So the reads and writes look just like a hash map lookup. It's the bracket syntax. You either do database bracket whatever equals the new value to do a write, or you do whatever variable equals database bracket the thing you want to pull out. And then again, the question mark is not the libraries feature. So it's not this Newmite library. It's built into Crystal itself. And it works in concert with this .nil question mark method. So then there's a delete, and the delete basically, it does what it sounds like. So this is the only database, this NumMite database functionality that is not that bracket syntax. So we today are going to go do something a little different. We're not going to really do much with REST APIs today. Instead, we're going to try to build HTML with Crystal's built-in templating language. So it's called ECR. So ECR stands for Embedded Crystal. And I literally just started researching this maybe half hour ago or so. So I pulled up the ECR page, which is here, and I just started reading through it. So what's kind of cool about it is it has real Crystal code in it, and it reads the whole template when you compile. So that's when you compile the binary, it literally pulls the binary in to your the binary that you end up with. So it pulls the template text into the binary you end up with, and then at that point, it pre-compiles the code that's in the template, and then later on, you've got code that takes variables and stuff. So you pass the variables into the compiled Crystal, embedded Crystal template thing, and it ends up being just like a function call. So this is pretty fast. So like in this case, this is a sample template. Everything inside of these, I guess that's like a bracket. I don't even know what that's called. Left, let's just call it left bracket, and then quote. Sorry, percent. So everything inside of there is Crystal code. So if name, and then you go down, and then the bracket percent equals is saying use the variable name and then replace it. So replace this whole thing with @name in the final HTML. So this is kind of like a function call. So when they do this is actually invoking the function call that Crystal compiled into this greeter.ecr. So this magic is done with this def2s. And def2s, if we click on it, it is a macro. So I haven't quite gotten used to macros yet, but I know from reading the little bit I have in Crystal about macros, and also my knowledge of macros in other languages, it's code that runs during compile time. So it's like meta. It's code that runs after you compile it is just the code you write. But macros are code that actually runs when you compile. So that's the magic that lets you have this thing run while you're compiling. It's just arbitrary Crystal code, I think. I think it's arbitrary Crystal code, but maybe with some limitations. I'm not quite sure. But I'll get there in one of the future Crystal Fridays for sure. So it's this right here is going to be code that runs during the compile, and that's the magic that will pull the template here, this greeting.ecr template, into the final binary as a string. It'll then compile the Crystal code. It'll parse out the template, compile it into a function call that will output hello and then the name that you pass into it later. So pretty cool, I think. And it's pretty fast too, because with this macro magic, you turn it into native Crystal code. And then at that point, after the macro has run, then you've got this new thing, this new Crystal code that has the code that you wrote, like the greeting class, plus the new function that represents the template. And then all of that gets compiled over into your final binary. And so all of this happens by basically just doing this. So you never really see the code that this def2s macro creates. You just write it like this and you're done. So I'm super psyched about that. This is the first time I've encountered macros. And so now that I know about this new toy, I'm going to go learn about this new toy. and then we'll come up with a cool way to use it in the future. Maybe next time we'll see how far we get this time, and what road we go down this time as well. So I want to use this stuff, and I want to make a dashboard page. So I had already started here just to do a little research. Before, when we did our home page slash, we had this code that basically went through the database, and for every item in the database, we would pass it this callback here. So this is the crystal notation, if you're not familiar, for a callback. This is the function arguments between the pipes. And then the function body is indented. So this is only a one-line function. If I uncomment this, oops. So this is just a one-line function, takes in a key and a value, and then it returns a string. And so db.each is going to then return the value that you get from combining all of the return values of the function. So obviously, let's say there's 10 key value pairs, the function is going to be called 10 times. So 10 strings are going to get returned, and then db.each will just take all the strings and combine them into one final thing. And that one final thing is going to be 10 lines of key equals value. So let's make that better though. I want to make it, pretty HTML code instead of just weird. It's not JSON. It's not really anything. It's just my own little, key equals thing, caret thing, whatever value. So if anyone knows what this thing is called, for some reason it slips my mind. So, either put it in the chat or put it on YouTube, YouTube comments or Twitter, and let me know. I would be eternally grateful if someone let me know what this is called. So we're going to do the same kind of thing where we're going to get all the key value pairs as a list of key value pairs. And then we're going to try to pass it into a template and then have the template do essentially the same kind of loop, but output all of the key value pairs as like a list item or something like that. So I'm going to go back and comment this out. And let's tackle this kind of step by step. So let me get a drink of water real quick. So yeah, let's tackle this step by step. Let's just first figure out how to render an actual template. So right before I came on, I had figured out how to do that. So Crystal has a pretty nice, the web framer called Kemal has a pretty nice way to not only get the template, but also pass the variables in, and then render the template with those variables. So going back to the Kemal documentation, you basically, at the very basic way, is you just set a variable and then you call render, and then magically the variable exists and is available in the template. So in this case, they're grabbing the name out of the URL parameters. So that would be here. They're setting it equal to name. And then when they call render, name is magically there. Honestly, I don't know how they do the magic, so that'll be another thing that we'll look into. But it's there, and that's pretty cool. Because in other languages, you have to kind of remember to set it, like do some special way to set it. So like in Go, sometimes you have to do like name equals blah, and then you have to do like template context dot set, and then string name equals the actual name variable. And it's so easy to forget that. And then you render your template, and then it's like, well, why is the template empty? And that's because name was not there. Just because you forgot to do like one little boilerplate piece. So I love magic. I love this magic. Hopefully it doesn't break. But for now, pretty cool. I just do name is here, and then I use name here in the final template. So let's go try this. So I copied the same code as you just saw in the docs, I just set name to a static value, ABC, and then I just put the ECR, the embedded crystal code, just like this. And you know what? Let's see. There is an embedded crystal language, but it doesn't really seem to be syntax highlighting. So let's keep an eye on that. We might have to change it to just plain old HTML, but you know we'll look into it. We'll see what looks better. So I'm gonna rerun the app, and it's available on port 3000. And you'll notice here it's serving on all port or on all interfaces in WSL2. And if you saw previous ones, you probably remember I had trouble getting to that URL from Windows, from outside of the WSL2 VM. No more. I think it was fixed in an update, which is kind of nice because before I had to curl. So that was a bummer. So I go to localhost 3000. This is going to into the VM, into the Kamal code. You can see it being requested here. And it executes the code that I wrote. So we've got that. That's pretty cool. So let's just do something more. Let's try a list because we know that we're going to have to pass in a list of key value pairs. So we'll just do def, and now we'll reload the code, run it again, and now it just shows the list. So, okay, that's fine. It's not super helpful, but at least we know like it'll actually print out a string representation of the list. And it actually looks pretty good too, so that's nice. But let's figure out how to loop through the list. And I'm pretty sure I saw a loop in here somewhere. Using logical statements, using loops. So it looks pretty much like Crystal. So actually, let's see, what is the minus? I think that's up here. Removes previous indentation, removes next new line. Okay, I think we can figure out what that's all about. So this is going to make sure it's on the very far left. So, okay, let's do that. We're just going to copy this and adapt it to our name. Let's call this names instead. So names equals do name. And then how do they close it? Same deal. They just do an and. So blah and blah that. Okay. So it's still going to be ugly HTML, but it'll be HTML. There we go. All right. So pretty good. We've got to the point where we can get a list and then we can print out the list in, you know, we would probably do this with like li in HTML, list element, unordered list, list element with the bullet points. But for now, this is what we got. And also it's nice. I see the embed crystal file type, and this is the one that I got as a VS Code plugin. It actually does have some decent syntax highlighting. So, and I'm amazed for like how, you know, quote unquote young Crystal is. It's a pre 1.0 programming language. Things like the, you know, developer experience. So that would be things like the VS Code plugin, even like the web frameworks. They are pretty polished. Like it's got good logging just out of the box by default. It's just kind of nice. Like I haven't really run into much that's made me go and like read up a bunch of code to figure out what's going on. Nothing like that. So I'm pretty psyched about that. That is a cool thing. So yeah, going back here, so we know that each thing from the database is going to be a key value pair. So I think we're probably going to end up making that look like a list of tuples. And if you're not aware of what a tuple is a fixed length list. So if you say like tuple of string, you can say I want the tuple of string to be 3 strings or 5 strings or 1 string or whatever. But that means that you can never have a tuple. If you say a tuple of 2 strings, you can never make that variable equal a tuple of 3 strings. It's fixed like at compile time. And that's nice because if you know at compile time you only have 1 key and 1 value per row in the database, you can say at compile time, I never want this to be anything more than 2 strings sitting right next to each other. So let's make this a list of tuples. So in Crystal, the tuple syntax is the squigglies. And make this here. I think it's the squigglies. We'll see. X and Y. So now, if we go in, what we're going to probably see, I think, is now name is going to be a tuple, a 2-tuple, a fancy way of saying a tuple with 2 strings in it. In this case, they're strings. So now we're going to see a list of, or we're going to see a bunch of hello, and then I think we're going to see the squiggly in the tuple. And you know what? Let's put some HTML in here, just because why not? And we'll do a UL, close, and then we'll do an LI, close, and you know, head, close the head, and then open the body and close the body. And that's just so we can see this stuff one line by line using the magic of HTML. Open it back up. And there we go. Cool. So we see it as the tuple form. Now, how do you get each element in the tuple? So first of all, let's just do the first one. So now we should see ABC and then X. So that you just get it as if it was a list, pretty much. Nothing more really than that. It's just that if you did name bracket 2, which would be the 3rd element in the tuple, that's not going to work. So reload it. And there we go. So that's pretty cool. So now we're talking. We've got the ability to do like a list of tuples. Whoops. Got the ability to do a list of tuples. We got the ability to print them out using this new fancy template language. We understand the template language. And now the last piece to put together is, okay, how do we get these tuples out of the database? So let's go through and see what we can do. So I know we've got our db.each. What else can we do? Well, it looks like it's it. So I'm pretty sure that db.each, or I'm almost positive db.each is going to return a list of the things that you want to put into the template. So let's call it key value pairs equals db.each. Oh, still had that commented out. And then we're going to just return the tuple, key value, and then end. So now we've got a variable called key value pairs. So this should be a list. I don't remember exactly how to put the notation down here. Tuple string. So I know that we don't have to put a type annotation in Crystal. It'll figure it out for us. But I really want to just make it explicit so that if we do get an error code or an error message in the compiler, we will know, like it'll know, first of all, what we wanted key value pairs to be, so it can give us a more intelligent idea of what we did wrong. Also, I think it's cool to list out the type, just, I don't know, just cause. So let's go into the Crystal documentation. Crystal lang, and let's see about tuples. Learn tuple. There. So you say that you want a tuple to be 1 int 32, that's the first element, 1 string, that's the second element, and 1 character, that's the third element. And then you put an array, and then this is this looks like a shorthand for saying tuple. So I almost had it. I'm going to do array instead of list, and then string, string. All right. So now let's see what we got. Oh, interesting. db.each does not return anything. db.each returns nil. So it looks like we're going to have to go through db.each, and then inside each execution of our callback, it looks like we then are going to have to just manually add to the key value pairs array. It would have been nice though if db.each could just pick up each element it could pick up each return value of each function call and then like combine it into a list. I thought it would do that, but that's okay. So we've got an empty list to start with, and let's look up how to append to an array. Because basically what we want to do is like key value pairs dot append, something like that. Maybe it'll autocomplete it. Push? No, I have no idea. Basically we want to do something like that. We want to push the key value pair, the tuple, onto the end of our key value pairs array. So let's look up the documentation for array. I think I just saw it. Array. Ah, it's got this whole thing going on. Interesting. And then that's cool too, because you can do an empty list of, and then the type you want it to be. And that's a lot shorter than this whole thing here, but it still tells the compiler the type. Okay, so we've got two things here. Let's go back to what we were trying to do, and that is to push on the end. So that's just left. And this is another thing I really like about Crystal. I'm used to languages that are more verbose. So I'm actually still getting used to the fact that Crystal is not as verbose. And that's things like obviously this, like visually, this actually makes sense because we got a list and then we want to take the thing on the right and put it onto the end of the list. But then there's also stuff like, you know, you see me doing all these parentheses because I'm used to like C, C++, Go, Java, stuff like that. But then Crystal can shorten this and use English words. So I can do that. I think. We'll see. The compiler will tell me if I can actually do this. But this reads more like English because now it's like empty list. And if you know, most languages represent a list as, you know, that, like Python and obviously Ruby and languages like that. So at least scripting languages represent it like this to some extent. And then we do, so empty list of, and then this is the type of each element in the list. So this is telling the compiler the exact same thing as what I was doing before with that, you know, colon, array, parentheses, tuple, string, but just with a lot less typing, and it's nice to read. So let's see if I was right though. It's all fun and games until the compiler tells you you're wrong, right? Undefined local variable of method names for cprox module. Ah, okay. Okay, I'm kind of stunned. This is super nice. So you can see this is a compile error from my template. So this goes back to what I was saying, is that templates are pre-compiled into code at compile time. And then that code combined with my code is all compiled to the final binary. So it was able to take that code in, so take the template, make it into compilable Crystal code, and then I got a compile error because names was not defined. Obviously, that's true. We're asking for names here, but there's no variable called names here. So it compiled it in. So the code literally was like taken. I guess this render function must be a macro that pulls the code in. And then it calls some function. And so instead of render, it's like we're calling, my template dot execute or something. And it passes in the variables that I had declared up here. And then there's no variable called names, obviously. But then the compiler actually can point me to the exact line and even column in that line. That is pretty cool. Coming from Go, I've been doing Go for a while, like, I don't know, 6+ years or something. And I kind of alluded to this before. Oh, we've got some comments. The only reason you can't do push AB. Oh, I see. The squiggly is also a hash. So, that's how I need to do it. I need to put the parentheses. Cool. Okay. So, the squiggly is also a block. So, push AB. Oh, okay. So, yeah, okay. I was actually getting too fancy. I would have been doing all kinds of parentheses everywhere, but instead I could just do left, left. So, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to remember this because I've been doing a lot of stuff with lists in this, functional programming code stuff, and I've been writing a lot of parentheses, so it's super nice to have this in my back pocket now. I noticed you said just like in Ruby, yeah, I gotta brush up on Ruby, but actually instead of brushing up on Ruby, I'm really happy to say I can just learn Crystal, and I'm noticing that my Ruby learning is actually a lot easier. So I suspect it's kind of opposite of what most people who already know Ruby are doing. So in one sense, I guess I'm behind the curve, but I'm also kind of happy I'm able to just go straight to Crystal. Anyway, for what that's worth. But yeah, so I came in here, names is not available. So basically I'm going to just change this to key value pairs. And then I'll just call this KVP, and we'll say KVP 0, and then whatever equals blah, and then KVP 1, close it, and I'm just going to get rid of the hello. It's not really useful for us. Compiles. All right. We lost our. Did we lose our localhost? Nope. Uh-oh. Something's wrong. Let's see. KVP1 equals. Let's do a little print here to make sure we've got our key value pairs, at least if we can see them on the command line. Run it. Empty list. What have I done? I wonder if this needs to. I wonder if this thing like returns a new array or something. Maybe not. Oh, I know why. There's no key value pairs in the database. That's funny. So we're going to have to go put one into the database. So that's going to be doing our post. So let's open up another curl or another console, curl x post d, and then we'll put our JSON URL, ABC, whatever, and then close it, and then localhost 3000. I'm sure I did something wrong there. Oh yeah, we've got to put a code in there. What did I do wrong there? Kamal doesn't know this way. I got to do /code and then the code. There we go. So now the thing should be in the database. I'm not going to restart the server because if I had to, that would kind of defeat the whole point of the server. So now we've got it. Awesome. Going back, it printed it out on the command line. That's always nice too. I can get rid of the print, wherever that was. There we go. And voila. So we've got a template. That's pretty cool. So I only have what, like 22 minutes left, but I want to start trying to do, trying to add to this thing a form to do a post, to upload a new key value pair to the server using that post endpoint. That post endpoint that I literally just did a curl. And it would be super nice to be able to do that because at the end of the day, I will almost invariably keep doing that, which is wrong, or that, which is wrong, or any number of other things that are wrong. So it'd be cool to have a UI to do it. So first thing, I've got to write some HTML. I need to go brush up on HTML forms. Actually, I think we can do Bootstrap. Why not, right? Let's add some more technologies to the mix here. I know there's a CDN, cool. And we'll put that in the head. So for those who are not familiar, Bootstrap is mostly a CSS library that gives you nice fancy ways to make stuff look good. So stuff look significantly better than this without doing a lot of work, without doing a lot of CSS or even knowing much CSS. I've been rolling with Bootstrap for like, oh man, since 2006, maybe 2008 or somewhere around there. It's been around for a while in some shape or form, and it just saves so much work. So that's not Crystal related, but you know, if you're making a website, which I know there are a lot of web frameworks for Crystal, it's a good tool to have in your back pocket. So we're going to apply some of that here. I know there's Bootstrap code for this UL, some Bootstrap classes you can apply to it to make it look good. I'm not going to bother with that now, but I know Bootstrap has a nice way to do forms, and we are going to do that. So blah, I'm just going to straight up copy this and format it a little bit. And looks like we're going to have method equals post. And I think there's another thing in the form element to tell it what URL it actually posts to. Form element MDN. I always use MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. That is the JavaScript for forms. This is the HTML for forms. Action is the one that goes to that tells you what the URL is. So action equals let's just say it's called add URL. So we're gonna have to create a new add URL endpoint, but it's basically gonna do the same thing as this whole thing. So we're gonna end up creating a new endpoint. The endpoint is gonna be a post endpoint. It's gonna do all the same idea of taking the code out of the URL or out of the form instead of the URL, taking the URL itself out of the form, putting it all in the database, sending it back, or actually redirecting back to the home page in this new case. So there might be a little bit of code overlap here with this, but it's going to be a lot simpler. So we've got our HTML here. Let's just see what it looks like first of all. So this has been tripping me up actually. Um, I always am used to, like in the Go world, for example, I'm always used to just refreshing. So like not recompiling and refreshing. But in Crystal with these ECR templates, I've been a lot of times refreshing and being like, well, what happened? Like, where is my form? And just like once again, it goes back to I have the template that's already compiled into the binary. Um, it's like, well, of course I would have to recompile to get the new template into the binary. Um, Eventually I'm going to look into a way to see if like I can have development mode where it's hot loaded, or maybe development mode um, where Kamal will automatically watch my source code and then recompile or something like that. But you know, I'm a baby in Crystal, so I'm gonna hold off on that and focus on writing the code instead of getting the tooling, you know, perfect for myself. Let's clear, open it back up, and I'm just hoping to see a form that does nothing. Yay! Okay, and then this should go to a 404. Oh, yeah, it goes to a 404, and that's because add URL, it goes to add URL. That's what I expected, and I don't expect to see an add URL in here, which I don't. Cool. So let's make one though. And I'm just gonna do not ready yet, whatever. So this is the nice little logo. I like that. Go again. Not ready yet. Okay, sweet. So let's change up a little bit of our HTML here. And I don't even know what all this is. So URL, we'll just do, you know, h2 add a new URL, close it. And oh, this is going to be URL code and URL. We don't want this to be a password because it's going to make it just the dots, not going to be able to see anything. So we'll make this text. We do not need the checkbox. And we have our submit button. So let's try this again. I just want to see if I got the HTML right. Go back. Yeah, okay. We've got our URL code and our URL. We should have the same thing. Oh, I said that was an email address. I remember this. Let's make that a text. Oh, yeah, there it is. I forgot to recompile. I changed the template, but forgot to recompile. Obviously, development tooling would be nice, but it is what it is for now. Cool. And then one last thing before I continue on. Let's see if I can open up the developer tools. Where is that? I forgot how to do it in Brave browser. Nah, let's forget it for now. I wanted to open up the web developer tools to make sure the post body was actually being sent. But I forgot how to do that in Brave for Windows. So we're just going to move on and do it from the code. Okay. So we've got this right here. We're going to have to consume the post body. So get the URL code in the URL, add to the database, and then redirect back to our homepage. None of which I have ever done with Kamal. So let's first do redirect, browser redirect. Fairly simple, env.redirect. Oh yeah, and it looks like we've got to pass a block with an environment in it. And then env.redirect home. Okay, so not much is going to happen. We're just going to go right back to the home page with no URL, with no new URL. Yeah, that's what we expected. Okay. You know, this is annoying me. I want to see some header at the top, some kind of header. So, sorry. Welcome to cprox. Restart. Yay, okay. That's my vanity right there. All right, so now let's figure out post bodies. What are we gonna search for? I guess forms. Yeah, wait. JSON parameters, body. Using a standard post body. That's perfect. That's what I expect. So env params body. And it looks like, let's just do it the unsafe way for now. And what I mean by safe is like, you know, this might be nil. This might not be a string. So eventually we're going to have to protect against that. But whatever. For now, let's just roll with it. So in here, env, let's say URL code was env.params.body. And then I forgot what we called these things. Excuse me. I forgot what we called these things. And we're going to have to do a name equals code and a name equals URL. So now we're going to have to do nvrams body code as string and then URL equals env.params.body URL as string. And let's just try it. db URL code equals URL. Let's just try it. Swing for the fences, right? Hopefully something will happen here. Start it. So, yeah, I mean, we're not doing any error checks. So this will get a little longer with the error checks. But I mean, hey, maybe it'll work. Take the URL code out of the form, take the URL out of the form, put it in the database, and then after it's now in the database, go back to the home page, and it should show up in the HTML. Wouldn't that be cool if we get it all done before the hour is up? Let's just do blah, and then... What? It worked. Super cool. Wow. Yeah, I'm stunned. Wow. Wow. So, I mean, it's that easy, I guess. I mean, maybe I have some time left, so maybe I can do some error checking. I seriously expected that to fail. Like, I expected it to literally not be that easy. Just because, like, I'm not used to it being that easy. I guess I'm used to doing things the hard way. Well, to be more specific, I think I'm used to languages that are more oriented towards just systems programming. Like I'm used to Go, I've mentioned. Like Go was originally built for systems programming. And the first things that were built with it were like databases, Kubernetes, if you're familiar, that's a distributed system, like stuff like that. There are some frameworks out there to write web apps with Go, but they don't have this kind of magic like this, where, you know, key value pairs just automatically shows up in here. So it doesn't have that kind of thing. So there's like cognitive load that gets added on. You couldn't do this. It would take more lines of code than this. I mean, I guess this is going to take more lines of code because I'm going to have to do some of the checks. But I mean, even the checks though, like there's going to be more compiler safety in the checks because the minute I do this, the minute I put the question mark, I will not be allowed to use URL code. So let's see what it looks like actually. The compiler will tell me no. And actually I have to put error trace. I have to put that on so I can see where in my code I went wrong. So scrolling up to the top where my code is at, that's the main right here. So that's line 35. it's saying that the first thing that I'm passing, the URL code, I'm passing in a string or a nil. This is called a union type. I'm passing in either a string or a nil. But at compile time, it doesn't know what it will be. So it's literally forcing me. It's saying, nope, you have to make sure. You have to make sure that if it's a nil, you handle it. Otherwise, then you can use it. So let's do that. So if it's not nil, db.url code as string equals URL. And else URL code was missing. And then we got to put the URL up above just because we're going to use it down here. And let's put this up in the if. We can get rid of that. We already did that. And we got to put a close bracket. And let's see. Now I think it should work. Yay. So, I mean, it should still work here. Did it? Yeah. So, I mean, I can keep going. I can keep going and say this. So let's try to keep the code kind of small. So if URL code is not nil, well, actually, and we got to do and URL nil that, and we have to do that string, and then we'll say URL code or URL was missing. So we're getting safer because we're making sure that it's not nil, but we still have to check this type assertion because this is going to be done at runtime. And then how did I do that down here? As S. Oh yeah, this was JSON magic. So can't do the JSON magic because we're a post body. So gonna have to do this a little differently. So it's actually good. Like I was gonna copy and paste this code from the post up into here, but now I'm seeing like there's so many differences. There's almost no overlap in the code, so I might as well not try to generalize it and make it reusable between the post add URL and then the post for the JSON. So just checking to make sure this still works. It compiles. Reload the page. Yeah. So I'm more and more confident now. A compiler is checking stuff for me. I'm more and more confident that when I get it to compile, it's going to actually work. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just about out of time. So I will push this code up. I will put this on YouTube right after this. And then I'll put the link to YouTube up on my site. And also next week, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do, as always. So I'm probably going to look at this code and see what's next. I have a couple ideas. One idea is Crystal comes with test facilities built in. They're called specs. It looks like when I started up, when I did my Kimal init way back in the day, it actually wrote some specs, like some skeleton specs down for me. And so like it looks like it's got this nice, I guess this is kind of like behavioral driven tests ish. So it like filled it out for me, which is super nice. So pretty much I have to read up. I'm probably just going to, whenever I get over to writing tests, I'm probably just going to read up on, the basics and then how to run them. And then I'll go from there. That's just how I roll, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I'm pretty psyched about how seamless this was today. And I'm like 3 weeks into Crystal, and I had done before this. I had started researching at 9:30 a.m. Actually, a little after 9:40 or so. I researched how to do templates. I researched it by going to let's see, templates. I researched it by going to here. I copied and pasted the code. It was working within 10 minutes. Then I came on the live stream and I did everything else right in front of everyone, right in front of you. So, like, that's not bragging for me. That's a testament to how easy it is to do powerful stuff with Crystal. And then also, it protected me. Like, this isn't a scripting language. It has a compiler that protected me against most of the big errors, like messing up forms, even forgetting. Like, this blows me away still. Even forgetting to set the right variable. So when you set a variable wrong in here, or sorry, up in here, and then you do a render, if you're trying to use a variable in the template that doesn't exist here, it doesn't compile. Like, that's right there. That's huge to me because I've done, big, large scale code bases that render templates, and I've had to write code each time. I've had to write code in tests to make sure, oh, did I set the variable in the code? Does it match up with the template? Is it a list? Is it a string? Does the template treat it as the right type? Blah, blah, blah. This gets rid of all that. It's like, wow, that blows me away. I'm really happy with this. So yeah, anyway, that's all of my praises for today for Crystal. Super cool. I will see you next week, same time, same place. And in the meantime, look out for a blog post with all of the YouTube details and a little overview as well. I'll put the link to it, but that will be on my site, /blog to be specific. And then it's pretty much it. So thanks everybody. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Take care.